Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book, and we are by the end of, we have the last three questions. So we are in chapter 2 of book 4, Future Joys and Sorrows. We have 3 more questions to go, and then we have the conclusion, which are texts written by Kardec that we are going to go over. So we're talking about heaven, hell, and purgatory. We discussed a little bit last week, but we still have some questions, and the last one is going to be San Luis that is going to explain to us. Okay, so again, heaven and hell, according to Spiritism, are states of mind. Purgatory, according to Spiritism, is the struggles on our evolution that happens mostly during our incarnations. Okay, Philip, can you read for us?
Most assuredly. 10:17. Spirits have said that they inhabit the 4th and 5th heaven, and so on. What do they mean by this? You ask them which heaven they live in because you have an idea that there are different levels of heavens, like stories of a home. So they answer you according to your personal beliefs. For them, references to a 4th or 5th heaven mean different degrees of purification and happiness. The same applies when you ask a spirit whether it is in hell. If it is unhappy, it says yes, because hell is synonymous with suffering. However, it knows perfectly well that it is not a furnace. A pagan would have replied that it was in Tartarus. The same may be said of other similar expressions, such as the city of flowers, the city of the elect, the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd sphere, and so on, which are only allegories used by some spirits figuratively, whether out of ignorance about the nature of reality or simply because they lack any knowledge of even the most elementary principles of science. According to the restricted idea of specific locations for rewards and punishments, and the common belief that Earth was the center of the universe, that the sky formed a vault, and that there was a region of stars, people placed heaven up above and hell down below. This resulted in expressions such as to ascend to heaven, to be in the highest heaven, to be cast down into hell, and so on. Astronomy has mapped out Earth's history and described its formation. Today, science has demonstrated that the Earth is one of the smallest worlds in space and has no special significance, that space is infinite, and that there is neither up nor down in the universe. As a result, it has become necessary to stop placing heaven above the clouds and hell in the depths of the earth. There was never a specific space assigned to purgatory. Spiritism provides the most rational, impressive, and consoling explanation about all these 3 subjects to human beings. It shows us that heaven and hell exist in ourselves. In a similar vein, we find purgatory in the state of incarnation in our successive corporal or physical lives.
Okay. So, this notion of 4th heaven, 5th heaven, and 3rd heaven is something that is still you find in many spiritualist doctrines and beliefs. I was reading something this week, in some, I don't remember exactly where, that says that the inhabitants of Earth are on the 5th dimension, and that there are 13 dimensions, and that the inhabitants of the 7th or the 8th dimension are already spirits that no longer need reincarnation. Again, I'm just giving an example of how this concept is out there, still exists, right? At the time of Kardec, he's talking here about spirits saying that they inhabit the fourth and fifth heaven. We need to understand that the spirits, the knowledge that they have in the spiritual world is the knowledge that they bring from Earth, adapted to the transformations they are going through. But, if you are not open to new ideas and new beliefs when you go back to the spiritual world, you're going to be, continue with your ideas. You're going to maybe understand the survival of the soul, but you find yourself in a place and you ask another spirit, where am I? And the other spirit tells you, oh, you are in fifth heaven. And then you just, because you bring this notion, you believe it. And according to Spiritism, and based on the literature that we received after the publication of the codification from André Luiz, from other spirits, even some literature that came before Spiritism, like Heaven and Hell from Emanuel Swedenborg, they talk about different levels in the spiritual world. But we know through Spiritism and through André Luiz that these levels are levels where spirits find themselves according to their different degrees of purification. So there is no such thing as fourth or fifth or sixth or 13th heaven. What there is different levels, dimensions in the spiritual world, where spirits that vibrate at the same level find themselves reunited. So to talking about Nosso Lar, if we're not going to say that Nosso Lar is on the third heaven or the second heaven, we know that Nosso Lar is above the lower zone. It actually is not above, it's in the lower zones, but it's the first organized colony in the lower zones for spirits that have acquired the ability to live in a place where all spirits together are making an effort to progress. But again, it's understandable this concept, because when spirits bring these notions for those, we have several mediums throughout the world that receive messages from the spirits, and the spirits say what they believe, what they believe. And if the medium is not part of a congregation that studies, understands the concept of the spiritual world, takes these explanations by the letter. If a spirit says, oh, I'm here on fifth heaven, and the medium just passes along and someone reads the message from the medium, immediately they think, oh, there is fourth, fifth, and sixth heaven, right? But the concept that Spiritism brings to us is that they are all states of mind, and they are all levels that we'll find ourselves according to our vibration. The Spirit talks about the pagans here, that they, when they talk that hell is synonymous of suffering, right? So a spirit we will not tell you that they are in a seventh heaven or first heaven, because they believe they are in hell, and hell is a state of mind, as we know. And but it always existed, like the Spirit says here. A pagan would have replied it was in Tartarus, which was the hell in paganism, right? So again, what we have to understand is there are specific places in the spiritual world where spirits find themselves, yes. But it's not, like Kardec explains to us here, it's not above, it's not below, right? Heaven is not above us, it's not below us. It's the spiritual world and the physical world are one and the same with different dimensions, right? Which is a concept that's not easy to understand. But if you think that we have spirits around us, right, all the time, So the spiritual world is here, right? If we have spirits here, the spiritual world is also here. Now, there are different levels. When you talk, you see André Luiz describing Nosso he talks about an organized place that he's living, and that from there he comes to Earth through the different books. So that's not on Earth, right? He says specifically is a city, it's a spiritual colony above the city of Rio de Janeiro, right? So when he says above, immediately we understand looking up, right? But the above is because of our lack of capacity to explain in a way that we would understand, right? We probably lack words that he can use to explain, because it's not really above and it's not really here, because he travels from Nosso Lar to Rio, right? In the Messengers, the second book of the collection, he spends 2/3 of the book on from Nosso Lar to Earth, right? He arrives on Earth in the last part, and starting from Missionaries of the Light forward, he comes immediately. He doesn't talk about the journey anymore, right? So again, we have to think of it try to think of it in abstract terms, because if we don't think in abstract terms, if we try to place them in physical spaces, we are deviating from the reality. But again, when spirits tell that they find themselves in fifth heaven or fourth heaven, we cannot say they are completely wrong. It's just what they understand about their situation and the place they find themselves. The problem is that they think that they are stuck there without being able to move to anywhere else, and that's not the reality. We know that spirits can always move down, and again, down here, not the right word to use, but go to the less evolved places to help and assist those spirits, and can make themselves visible to less evolved spirits. But the opposite doesn't happen. It's the less evolved spirits cannot go to more elevated places unless they are taken there, or they can get a glimpse, like André Luiz went to his mother's place of living. But he just got a glimpse, and it was not the place that he stayed. Okay. Any comments, questions here? Yes, Danny.
So, Nosso Lar is the colony that rescues people from the lower zones, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily. Also, but you can go directly to Nosso Lar without going through the lower zones.
So, but you said that it's inside, it's in there. So, is that like the penthouse of the lower zone, like, or it's a different?
Yeah, it's again, it's first, it's not above the city of Rio de Janeiro, it's within the city of Rio de Janeiro, right? Which is also a concept that is difficult for us to understand. But if you think of, if it makes it easier for us to understand, that's not the reality, we can say yes. It's where you are leaving the lower zones and moving to the higher spheres. That's where Nosso Lar is located, right? Because you find in other books those how do you call it, transitory houses of assistance, right? That you find in the Messengers, where they stay some time in it, and you find more also in the Workers of Eternal Life. You find others. So there are spirits that don't go to Nosso Lar but they go to these transitory houses of assistance and stay there to be assisted and even to work there. So these are organized outposts in the lower zones, right? So they are inside the lower zones. Nosular is not really inside the lower zones, it's outside, it's not above, it's outside. It's when you are leaving the lower zones, moving to higher spheres of living in the spiritual world.
So it would be like the first upgrade of your existential spiritual level, or like so the Nosular is not that evolved in terms of being a celestial
Not at all.
planet or happy.
No.
Not yet.
No. Yeah, it's exactly what you said. It's the first organized place that you can find yourself above the lower zone, because the lower zones is a group of spirits that are all immersed in guilt, in that they're not doing anything positive for them. They're just hanging in there in their own, immersed in their own suffering, in their own world. Below that, you have the infernal zones, which are the liberation type of places that there are leaders that they have slaves, other spirits that are slaves, and these more dark places, right? But the places, organized places, again, the outposts, they are organized places, but they are more like a hospital in the middle of a war zone, right? Nosular, no, it's a city. It's an organized city, right? In a place, and there are Nosular all around the world, right? Whenever you have a place where you have many spirits living, you have an organized place like Nosular above, right? Again, with different characteristics, different type of organization according to each place, because of course a place above China will be organized in a different way than a place above Brazil or the United States or so, but they are organized places in terms of resembles a city or a town. But yes, first level of people, the Brazilians, they all want to go to Nosular because they all read Nosular, they want to go to Nosular. But we can aim for more than Nosular, if we work hard. But at least we should aim for Nosular, right? Because if we end up not even there, it's because we failed in our opportunity. We missed our opportunity. Okay?
Yeah, I understand Nosular from the book itself. The differentiation of lower level of existence in the spiritual world and Nosular is the government of the place, the administration of the place. They are all devoted to do their best to govern or to administer the place in accordance with the teachings of Christ. Far from being perfect, but at least the goal, the objective is to aim that high, a place where things should work in accordance with the teachings of Christ. And in the lower zones, we know that things can run in accordance with the stronger. That is the big difference.
Yeah, and if you for those that have read Nosular, and if you remember, there is the case of a young lady that André Luiz meets there, that she has the opportunity to stay in Nosular, and she decides to leave Nosular because she wants to find her partner that is in the lower zones or somewhere. I don't remember exactly where he is, and she leaves Nosular. She cannot stay there because she's not happy there. So it's far from being a perfect place. There is this lady that André Luiz meets that cannot find a place that she likes to work, right? She's always complaining about the places that she's working, she's never happy, so she keeps changing, but she's in Nosso so she has the merit to be there. But the merit to be there doesn't mean that you may not be making much of a progress because they're imperfect spirits. Why you have a bus in Nosso Because not all spirits there know how to volitate, right? They need to walk. They need transportation. Why do you have food and drinks in Nosso Because the spirits that are there still need to drink and to eat. They don't know how to feed themselves from air, which more evolved spirits can do. So you see by the characteristics of Nosso that is still very material in the sense of material of here on earth. Time in Nosso is exactly the same as time on earth. So when it's night here, it's night there. When it's, like Rio, right? When it's night in Rio, it's night in Nosso So it's not, more evolved colonies have different time than on earth. So the characteristics by what you read in Nosso is very similar to what you have in the cities here on earth. Okay. All right. Thanks, Philip. Next one. You're on mute, Philip.
10:18. How should we interpret Christ's words? My kingdom is not of this world. When he replied in such a manner, Christ was speaking figuratively. He meant to say that he only reigned over pure and unselfish hearts. He is wherever the love of goodness reigns, but those who are greedy for or attached to the things of this world are not with him.
Okay, so for us to understand the Christ's words, my kingdom is not of this world, we have to understand the context of the Messiah that the Jewish have been waiting for since Moses, or since the beginning, since Abraham, right? At the time of Jesus, there were three main sects in Israel, which were the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Zealots. The Pharisees were the dominant class. They were waiting for a Messiah that would come and dominate the physical world, right? The Zealots wanted to overthrow the government. They were the revolutionaries of the time. They were the ones that wanted to cause disturbance immediately. The Pharisees kind of composed themselves with the Romans that were dominating. All, of course, not happy to be dominated. They wanted freedom, and they believed that the Messiah would bring the freedom that they were waiting for. And then Christ arrives, and he's seen as the Messiah. But if they are waiting for a Messiah that would dominate here, when Christ says, my kingdom is not of this world, you understand why he was saying that. He was saying that because the disciples and the Jews that they followed him and they were listening to him in the beginning were waiting for him to lead a revolution against the Romans, right? They have been waiting for this. So that's why, again, it took him, he couldn't convince many of the Jewish people, especially the ones that were in directing, they were in the synagogues and they were in the temples of the time, right? They have the different, you have the Samaritans also, which was a different sect that were not allowed to go to Jerusalem and to the temple, created their own temple. And the Jews also, they have different beliefs at the time. There were the Pharisees had all the books, they believed in all the books that are composed of Torah. The Sadducees believed only in the 5 first books of Moses. So they had different beliefs, but all of their beliefs was for the Messiah that was going to come and take over politically and made the Jews the dominant people in the world. And then comes Jesus and says, my kingdom is not of this world, meaning the true home is the spiritual home, which is something that we in Spiritism are always trying to make to bring this concept to those that are studying Spiritism. Because if we are eternal spirits and we have been coming through many reincarnations, but in the end, when we become perfected spirits, we are no longer going to need to reincarnate. So our place is there, it's not here, right? Because if it was here, but the end game would be staying here forever, right? Become immortal, incarnated immortals. But we are immortal spirits, not immortal human beings. Our physical body dies, even if we, and there are many that are trying, right, to preserve the physical body, to the cryogenesis, right? That's how it's called. Yeah. So those that are trying, they are not going to succeed because the physical body is not eternal, immortal. So if we understand that we are eternal spirits and eventually our place of living will be the spiritual world, so the kingdom is not of this world. Jesus is right. Now, you can imagine that at that time, when you are truly waiting for a Messiah that is going to conduct your people to dominate the earth, for you to accept someone that comes and says, no, I'm not going to do that because I really don't care. That's not Jesus' words, but that's what he meant. I really don't care about this physical world. My kingdom is not of this world. It took some time, and not many believed him. And you see that it started to grow after, mostly after he was crucified, which was a way for him to also to show himself, right, by the so-called resurrection, which is materialization of Jesus. He was the final step to convince many of this true, right? Because, for instance, Thomas, he only believed that in the spiritual, truly believed in the spiritual world when he saw Jesus and he could touch Jesus materialized, right? So when we analyze from the historical perspective and by what we know today, it's easier to understand Christ's words at that time. But for them at that time, it was very hard because it was a concept that the Jews never had. The Torah also always, the scriptures always promised a Messiah that would bring to them domination, and they understood the domination as the physical world. Okay? Questions, comments here? Okay, so we arrived. The last question of the Spirits book. 19.
Will goodness ever reign on earth? Goodness will reign on earth when among the spirits who come to live here, the good outnumber the bad ones. They will usher in a reign of love and justice, which is the source of goodness and happiness. Through moral progress and adhering to God's laws, Humanity will attract good spirits to earth and will keep the bad ones away. However, the latter will not definitively leave earth until its people are completely free of pride and selfishness. The transformation of humanity was predicted, and you are now approaching the time when it is destined to take place. Progress will happen when higher spirits incarnate and create a new generation on earth. The wicked spirits who die each day and all who try to halt advancement are excluded and forced to incarnate somewhere other than earth. They would be out of place among the honorable members of the human race, whose happiness is impaired by their presence. They will go to new, less advanced worlds where they will carry out difficult missions. These missions will provide them with the means of advancing while contributing to the advancement of their younger, less evolved brothers and sisters. In this exclusion, do you not see the true significance of the transcendent image of the paradise lost? Do you not also see in the appearance of human beings on earth under similar conditions and carrying the seeds of passions, as well as proof of their primitive inferiority within themselves, the real meaning of original sin? Considered from this perspective, original sin consists of the imperfection of human nature. Therefore, each member of the human race is only responsible for their own imperfection and wrongdoing, and not for that of their ancestors. All of you, people of faith and goodwill, must enthusiastically and courageously devote yourselves to the noble work of regeneration. You will in turn reap 100-fold for every seed you sow. Woe to those who close their eyes against the light, because they will sentence themselves to centuries of darkness and sorrow. Woe to those who focus their happiness on the things of this world, because they will suffer hardships that far exceeds their present joys. And above all, woe to the selfish, because they will find no one to help them bear the burden of their misery. St. Louis.
So we end the Spirit's book with message from St. Louis talking about the planetary transition, right? Which is something that is widely discussed nowadays amongst spiritists and non-spiritists. Some other spiritualist beliefs also talk about the transition that the world is going through. And it's interesting because I've been hearing different perspectives of that planetary transition, which, you know, you see some things that are very in symphony with Spiritism, and some things that are completely different. But anyways, according to Spiritism, the planet Earth is evolving. Planet of trials and atonements, or trials and expiations, is what we are still. We are moving towards a world of regeneration. What's the difference between the world of trials and atonements and a world of regeneration? It's in a world of trials and atonements, evil predominates over goodness. In a world of regeneration, goodness prevails over evil. Again, this is in terms of the number of spirits that are incarnated, right? When the majority of spirits, more than 50% of the spirits that are incarnated, will practice goodness because of what they are, then we'll be in a world of regeneration. Does it have a fixed date? It does not. It depends on us. all 30 billion of us that are here on Earth, we have to make the transition, right? There is a passage in the book I Came Back, which is unfortunately not translated into English, what is a great book, so that's why we don't talk about it much. But Brother Jacob learns about the spirits incarnated on Earth, and what they tell him that 2/3 of the inhabitants of Earth, meaning both incarnated and discarnated, are on their evolutive journey from irrationality to intelligence, or from intelligence to reason. And 1/3 are in transit from reason to humanity. So that this book was written in 1948, right? So it's 70 years, so 80 years more or less, 75 years. But if, we know the evolution is not very fast. So we probably have less than 2/3 now, but still the majority are still spirits that are transitioning not yet to humanity, which is, once you transition into humanity, what does it mean? That goodness is inside of you, right? Even we are making mistakes, and we are sometimes doing wrong, making wrong choices. And when we make these wrong choices, when we cause harm, we immediately regret, or after a certain point we regret. We understand and we know that we make the wrong, chose the wrong path, did the wrong thing. These spirits that are still focusing on following those that do practice evil, not all of them are spirits that are evil per se. Some of them are just following because of lack of good discernment, right? Normally, what the example I give is when you think of a gang here, right? The members of the gangs have leaders and the followers who are there. And sometimes they want to leave, they cannot because the leaders do not allow them to leave. They're violent. And some of them are there because they admire, so they have an idealistic view and a wrong idealistic view. So they are not bad per se. They are just misguided. So in the sense of the misguided, these spirits, if they have another opportunity and good guidance, they will change their thoughts, and they can be directed to goodness, right? So when St. Louis is talking here about the spirits that are leaving Earth, the bad spirits that are going to leave Earth, are those spirits that are doing evil because they like to do evil. It's the minority. The majority of the followers will still have another chance. Doesn't guarantee they're going to succeed. And if they don't succeed, they eventually will be taken to these less evolved worlds where they will, like St. Louis says here, they will go to new, less advanced worlds where they will carry out difficult missions. They will be the leaders of these primitive or less evolved worlds where they will have the knowledge, but not the moral. But even the moral that they have will be either similar or slightly better than the morals of those that are there. You can just look at the history of humankind, right? Things that were widely enjoyed at the time of Christ, like going to the circus to see the animals devouring Christians, right? It's not something that we could imagine today that we would have. We may have some people still on Earth that would enjoy these spectacles, right? But it will be a very small minority. At that time of the Romans was the majority of the population. If they had the opportunity to go to the Colosseum to see the sacrifice of the Christians, they would gladly go and party there, right? So you see progress, and you see that the opportunities are still happening now. What the spirits say, why we're seeing so much destruction, so much things happening nowadays that look that we are going backwards. Sometimes people say, I don't see any progress, I think we're going backwards. Because when you go into this transitory phase, this transition from one planet to the other, all the spirits that are here and that still deserve a last opportunity, they will come to a new incarnation. But many of them will fail because they will come and they will fall to their inferior instincts. And if they get together with a group of others that want to do this, have the same objectives, they will do some of the horrible things we see throughout the world today. But nowadays, what's the difference? We see the news almost instantly, and most people are shocked by it, are not sympathetic to what they see around. At the time of let's say, a time of Christ, right? The majority would be gladly participating in using people as burning people to illuminate the streets. They used to do that, right? One form of torture, and other forms of torture that nowadays we think they are not acceptable in a civilized society. It doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, because we still have a lot of spirits that take pleasure in causing harm to others and using their inferior tendencies. But we see that that's the transition that St. Louis is talking to us. And here he talks about, the image of paradise lost, right? So these spirits that go to, they're sent from Earth to a less evolved planet, right? To a primitive world. Their feeling is of a paradise lost, right? They lived in a place where, they had a lot of things that made their lives comfortable, cars, planes, air conditioning, and other things, depending on the place you live. And you go to a place that go back to live in the jungle, or you live in that having to work with your hands, and you have no amenities, right? So without really remembering what you had clearly, but you have this impression of the paradise lost, right? So that's where the image of paradise lost came to. The spirits that were brought to Earth in this transition from when Earth changed from a primitive world to a world of trials and regenerations that happened sometime between 50,000 and 10,000 years ago, where you have the spirits that built the pyramids, the Phoenicians that brought the alphabet and the numbers, and all these spirits that came from more evolved civilizations and brought intellectual advancements that the inhabitants of Earth at that time didn't have. So finally, St. Louis gives the message to us: if we want to be part of this planet of regeneration, we should devote ourselves to the noble work of regeneration. It's an individual and collective work. We work for our own progress by helping others to progress. That's the work that Spiritism teaches us. Without charity, there is no salvation. So, meaning, if we want to stay here and we want to be a part of this world of regeneration where goodness prevails over evil, we need to do our part. We need to do our work. And again, the transformation doesn't happen from one day to another. It's a process. It takes decades or hundreds of years. We can see some of it already. If you just look around, there are some countries in the world that the living conditions are much better than other places. The developed countries that, in Europe that you find, Denmark, Sweden, New Zealand, in close to Australia. There are some places where the inhabitants have already the advantages of a good living condition. It doesn't mean that they are all happy. It doesn't mean that there is not crime, because goodness prevails over evil. It doesn't mean that it no longer exists. And you can see in a place like Denmark, crime is not something that is very usual, but it still happens. Homeless, can you find homeless? Yes, you can, but there are few of them, comparing to other countries that are much less advanced, where you have these problems much more predominant. So you see that the first signs of what would be a world of regeneration already around us, in perfect places, but better than other places. So that's what we should aim for, and when it's part of our work and part of our work as a community to change. Danny, you had a question.
So I remember there was a guest lecturer that went to the SGNY many years ago. He never came back with that lecture again. I don't remember his name. He talked about this transition that Earth is going through, but he talked in the terms of a physical change that Earth was supposed to go through. He even talked about the axis of the Earth shifting, the Earth warming up. He brought even some numbers about it. It was very intense. It was many years ago,
I think
maybe before Olivia was born.
No, it was not Luis Lima. No, it was Álvaro, the father of that girl that used to come here, Marina. He's a physic, right?
Physicist? No.
Physicist, yeah, he's a physicist. Yeah. It is the transformation of the planet, physical transformation of the planet also happens, yes. So Earth is tilted, right? It's not straight, the axis. And they say that one sign of Earth evolving is if it goes back to straight, or it goes to straight. So as Earth evolves, you should have less catastrophic events on Earth. When we look around and you see the climate change and we see things getting worse, we may question ourselves. How, right? Things are not getting better, things are getting worse. But also our recognition of the problem allows us to address the problem, right? Because in let's say 1500, 1700, people would not even be aware that there was a climate change. They will go through the changes, and they don't have any ways of taking notes or studying it. Right nowadays, yes, we compare to 100 years ago, and we see that the Earth, the polar caps are melting, hurricanes are worse. So these are signs that Earth is changing also. But again, it's very easy for us to be negative and think, oh, this is all going down the drain. We're going to destroy the planet. But the very fact that we are aware of the problem and we have people working to solve the problem give us hope. It may work, it may not. We don't know. And again, like another speaker that came here in the time when everybody was saying that the world was coming to an end in 2012, he said, you know, if it really comes to an end in 2000, when people say the only difference is that we all go back to the spiritual world together instead of going separately, right? Because we are eternal spirits. So if we destroy Earth, we will continue, but we will carry a heavy responsibility of having destroyed a planet. It's a karma that we're going to create for ourselves, the ones responsible for it, right? So, but I rather think that we are going to be able to address these issues more and more and better as a sign of progress.
So we could destroy Earth, and as you say, and it would be a terrible karma, because the Earth has this path of evolution, let's say, or
but the evolution of Earth is based on 30 billion spirits that are around Earth, the free will of 30 billion. And if we decided to destroy Earth, those 30 billion will carry this karma of having destroyed the planet, you know. And I have no idea what are the consequences for that, because I don't think that nobody ever spoke about that. But of course, you do something of that magnitude, you carry a responsibility. But again, I prefer to think that we're not going to destroy the planet, but it's possible. Yes, we have a nuclear power to destroy Earth 10 times or 20 times, I don't know. So it's just a matter of someone pressing a button, crazy one pressing a button. Theoretically, in practical terms, we know that there are higher spirits taking care of things that happen here and trying to control the damage, right? Like we see, going back to Nosso spirits working to help and assisting those victims of World War II.
Yeah, because there are several scientists saying that the next generation, like my daughter's generations, the kids now, when they reach our age, if we don't change fast, there is going to be hard to reverse the path that Earth is taking in terms of changing too much its climate that is bearable for us to be here. And that lecturer talked about that we would be having to adapt to the temperature, to Earth's natural way of being, because we are talking also about billions of years, right, of Earth coming to this point. So it's not 100 and certain years when we started using fossil fuels, right? It's billions of years in the plan to Earth become to where it is, right? So it's scary in the sense that the kids who are inheriting Earth won't be able to change the course if it gets too late. I mean, if we don't act right now.
Yeah, but
that's what's the scary part of it. Scientists saying that.
But in my opinion, they have to say that. Because if they don't say that, we are not going to do anything, right? If this is really what's going to happen, I don't think they can predict. They can more or less predict, but not fully predict, because it's something we haven't gone through. But every time I read this, I think, yes, they have to say that, because that's the only way that people, and not a lot of people, will pay attention. Because if they don't say, if they say, oh no, everything is okay, we're damaging, but it's not that much, nobody's going to make any effort to correct the course, right? So there has to be scientists saying, we are destroying the planet, we need to take care of the planet, because that's the only way that people will pay attention to it and will make an effort to address the issue. So, but again, I have the view that we are going to address, like, the ozone layer that we are, 30, 50 years ago, we said that we are destroying the ozone layer. Nowadays, we're not, when we look at the ozone layer, we are not destroying that much according to expectations we had. We're still damaging it, but it's recovering better than we expected. So you see, things change. But again, it was important because we had to change all the refrigerators, because they were the most destroyers, the cars. So we keep changing. We are changing into electric cars to reduce pollution, right? I remember that when I was young, people would say that nobody would be able to live in São Paulo in 30 years if the pollution continued. Nowadays, people barely talk about pollution there, right? Because we address the issue, right? But, if people didn't say anything 30 years ago, nobody would take care of it, right? Or 40 years ago. So I think that it's the way that we need to have the carrot in front of us for us to chase it. If we don't make any effort.
But also what's causing warming hasn't been around for billions of years. It's only been since the industrial era, right? So we have to keep that in mind.
Started in the Industrial Revolution. But the ability to read about it, to measure it, also started around the last century, right? So again, are we doing damage to Earth? Oh yes, we're doing a lot of damage. But are we going to destroy Earth? I wouldn't say that. I think it's we are going to end up addressing the issue one way or another. Again, it's just opinion, right?
And I can see your point of view in a way that a lot of colleges are now offering environmental sciences, environmental engineering, environmental whatever. So it's a change. It's all new courses.
Yes, and these people will graduate, we work on it, and we will address the issues. And again, if the way humanity, the way we work is, we need to be pushed, right? We need to be challenged, because if we are not, we're not going to make the effort, right? So that's why I think it's important. The scientists should continue saying that we're destroying the Earth. That's the only way we're going to address the issue, right? Okay. All right. So that's the end of the questionnaire of the Spirits book, but we still have the conclusion. Next week is Thanksgiving, so we'll be closed. 2 weeks from today, we are going to study the conclusion, which is something we haven't studied in the last 3 or 4 times that we study the Spirits book, because the conclusion and the introduction, there is a lot of similarities. So this time we're going to study the conclusion, and then we are going to go over the introduction, not reading all of it. We're going to go over just in terms of some important points of it. But the conclusion we're going to read, if there are 9 items, we're going to read all 9 of them. Okay, but important, well, of course, Thanksgiving next week, we're going to be closed. All our other activities are going to work normally. We are here on Monday. We have our classes on Sunday this week and next week. This Sunday is the Mediums book, and next Sunday will be Q&A. And Tuesday is also regular classes. Book club, next Wednesday is the last chapter of the book Prelude to Divine Kingdom, and then in the following week, we started a new book by Divaldo Franco and Victor Hugo, which is called, Danny?
The Ill-Fated Diamonds.
The Ill-Fated Diamonds, a very interesting story by Victor Hugo and through the psychography of Divaldo Franco. Yes, but that is not this Wednesday, the other Wednesday. This Wednesday we finish Prelude to Divine Kingdom. Okay. This Saturday, the lecture by the United States Spiritist Federation is by Marcelo Medeiros, who used to be one of the directors of the Inner Enlightenment Spiritist Society and moved to Atlanta now. He's going to talk about the importance of silence. That's important for many of us, right? Much is said about the power of words, but what can we say about silence? On many occasions, it is not enough to know how to choose our words wisely. We also need to learn how to speak at the opportune moment, or to keep our thoughts to ourselves. The Spirit of Truth tells us that we need to know how to silence our rivalries and discords so that no harm should come to the work. And Emmanuel explains that we should cultivate the power of silence, as silence brings us the voices of God. So in this talk, we'll study these two lessons and see some examples from Jesus to understand the importance of silence in our lives. Also, this series, Psychology and Spirituality, is also now available on Spotify if you want to listen to it, okay? I believe the first 10 episodes are on Spotify. And Saturday after Thanksgiving, we will not have the USSF talk. Okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer, please?
Yes, thank you very much, John and Elmo, and thank you everyone for being with us and participating this evening. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we give thanks for the opportunity to be together again for our studies of the Spirit's book. We have learned that heaven, hell, and purgatory are not physical locations, but are states of mind with particular vibratory rates. The reincarnating process with a physical body could feel like a purgatory with many challenges, trials, and where suffering prevails. Advancing moral progress when goodness reigns on earth will bring forth a time of love and justice. Earth is moving toward a planet of regeneration away from these trials and atonements. Progress will occur when higher spirits incarnate and create a new generation on earth. But as we can do so now, we can do our part to evolve with goodness, with faith and effort. We give thanks to our spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us for our loved ones, our teachers, the directors, our counselors, the mediums, the workers, and everyone who has joined us and is participating. We pray for inner peace, and we certainly pray for world peace currently, and for those who are suffering deeply in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray that we can be more respectful of human life. We can be more respectful of each other and our differences, and yet our similarities as well. And we pray for our center, SGNY, and all Spiritist centers throughout the world, that they may grow, expand, and be protected day and night. As we close now, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers. May we remind ourselves to be beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and of charity. So be it.